Hi everybody, it's Aggie and welcome to episode 3 of DPSI with Aggie. So before we move on to today's topic, I would like to do a short recap of last week's episode. So the Diploma in Public Service Interpreting Level 6 qualification is an exam-based qualification which is basically conducted online only. So the exam can only be sat online. You can sit the exam in your own home using the virtual examination center provided by the CIOLQ, or you can also use one of the approved UK-based examination centers. I will be devoting some special segments to course providers and examination centers in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned. I will be talking to some owners of examination centers, so for those of you for whom sitting an exam at home is not an option, you will be happy to know that there are some alternative arrangements that you can make. And I also mentioned about some non-negotiables, some things that you have to provide and you have to make sure that you have in advance of the exam. And I also mentioned that you have to have a laptop with a camera. I also recommended buying a webcam, an external webcam, and one of the things that I really recommend that you get for yourself is one of these headsets with a microphone to make sure that you get the best quality sound and that you also hear every single word spoken by the interlocutor and the examiner during your exam, because that's going to be extremely vital for you to get the best outcomes, best chances of passing. So before we move on to a breakdown of the actual exam, I would like to apologize because last week I actually forgot to mention something very important, and that is note taking. It is recommended that you get yourself some loose paper and something to write with for your exam. Now, I devote quite a lot of my YouTube content to paperlessness and paperless solutions, such as a Rocket book like one of these, and basically making notes without paper, also using tools such as an LCD pad. However, for the purposes of the exam, the CIOL recommends that you get yourself some loose paper, make note on that with a pencil or a pen or whichever is most comfortable for you, and then very important thing, you have to rip them up in front of the camera. You have to rip up the notes and dispose of them. Why? Obviously because this exam is a proprietary exam, and the CIO wants to make sure that there won't be any not allowed dissemination of information as to what the exam is about. So for that purpose, you make sure that you rip up your notes so that you can't, or nobody else can, recreate the content of the exam afterwards. I also did promise some updates, and one of the really big updates for this year is an extra exam scheduled for March. You can watch this presentation where I break down what you can basically count on when it comes to languages and topics for this special March examination session. So let's go. For those of you who would like to sit, who are maybe ready to sit the DPSI examination, there is a really exciting update. There is a special session in March, so just round the corner, which is going to be organized in DPSI Law only. So due to the really big demand from the Ministry of Justice and other organizations, which is, by the way, great news for people who, like myself, are committed to promoting professionalization and upskilling of colleagues, this is great news that this qualification is in such a demand. If you are ready, if you have been maybe thinking about this for a while, you can sit the exam in less than 2 months' time. You can find the information on this address, www.ciol.org.uk, and there is a special tab called March 2023 exam. Here is the list of languages that you can sit the examination in. So there are 11 languages, and again, I'd like to remind you that this is going to be the DPSI Law option, law pathway only. And it's also important to remember that this is going to be a first come, first served basis, so not everybody will be able to be accommodated. And if you still want to find out about the deadlines for applications, dates of exams, dates of applications for special considerations, etc., you can find this on this address, and I'm just going to show you really briefly the key dates so you can have a look for yourself. So here are the key dates for the DPSI March 2023 Law Pathway Only session, which can be sat in 11 languages. You have time until the 10th of February, so this is quite soon, it's next week. You can still register for your DPSI exam this March. That's if you want to pay the standard fee, and there is an extension, an additional exceptional fee applies. By the way, all the information about things like reasonable adjustments can be found in the policies section of the website. I'm just going to show you in a moment where. So the exam dates are between 20th and 24th of March, and as it used to be when I sat the examination, the written part is usually a week after the oral part, so all the written units, so that's unit 4 and 5, which is going to be on the 30th of March. A special consideration application is going to be until the 31st of March and 6th of April, and hopefully your great results will be released in June and your certificates will be issued by the 25th of August. So this is where you can see all the key dates for March. And if you want to find out about the policies, this is where the policies can be found. So CIOL, qualifications, policies. So if you want to find out about the special consideration and reasonable adjustments, this is where this can be found. You can read it at your leisure to just get all the facts in black and white. So on to today's topic. The DPSI examination consists of 5 mandatory core units, and the exam is divided into 2 parts itself. First, you sit the units 1, 2 and 3, which are the so-called oral units and test your oral interpretation skills. And then usually a week after or thereabouts, you sit the 2 written units, which are unit 4 and 5, and they are testing your translation skills. It's worth mentioning that the units from 1 to 3, so all the oral units, are graded on level 6, and the units 4 and 5 are graded on the level 5. Now let's break down those units into smaller parts. Like I've mentioned before, in order to have a DPSI qualification, in order to use the words DPSI behind your name, you have to pass all the 5 mandatory core units. From the point when you start sitting the exams, you have 3 years to complete all the modules in order to obtain the qualification, your electronic certificate. So let's start with Unit 1. Unit 1 consists of 2 parts. Part 1A, which is 20 minutes long. It takes 20 minutes, and it tests your consecutive interpreting skills. So consecutive interpreting, for those of you who maybe call it somewhere else where you are based, this is interpreting after someone finishes talking. So someone says a sentence or 2 sentences or more, and once they finish, you deliver the interpretation. And the part 1B takes 10 minutes, and it tests your simultaneous interpreting skills. So simultaneous interpreting is following closely in real time without stopping someone who is speaking. Now, there's been a change in how this exam is delivered. Well, there's been a massive change. In 2020, the exam became online only as a response to COVID restrictions, and that's how it has been delivered since then. So CIOL wrote on the website that in response to the feedback and comments from the candidates, they decided to use a recording, and you will be sitting the exam using the MS Teams. So you're going to have a recording of a passage, and the first passage is going to be from other language, so the language of your choice, into English, and the second passage is going to be from English to other language, and the recordings are roughly 4 minutes each. Now, this might be a bit of a surprise to someone who maybe is not used to interpreting recordings, but the great news is that there are multiple sources of practice material, and I will be talking about those at length in the following episodes of my series. And also something that might be worth considering, again, I will be talking about this, is the fact that you, in preparation for the DPSI, can create your own materials to practice with, and you can also adjust the speed, and that can be done using speech imitation software, and that can be done quite easily. And again, that's something that might be worth considering. But again, this is quite a big change from the passage being read by a speaker to a recording. So this was Unit 1, your consecutive and simultaneous interpreting skills, and the Units 2 and 3 are concerned with sight translation. Sight translation is something that in my everyday practice I use quite often, whether it's in court or at a doctor's or during social services meetings in many different contexts. Basically, you get a piece of text and you have to read it out live, and you have to maintain, this is just a very rough summary, you have to maintain the tone, the meaning, the register of the text, and this is exactly what the exam looks like. Unit 2 is sight translation into English, and Unit 3 is sight translation from English. You will be given some time to prepare. Please don't quote me on this because that might have changed. But when I was sitting the exam, I believe it was 5 minutes to read the text first. We were not allowed to take any notes and make any annotations in any way, shape or form, and we were also not allowed to use dictionaries. This is something very important. Units 1, 2 and 3 are not the units where you can use a dictionary to check a word or a concept. So this is no dictionaries. And basically after the 5 minutes I had to deliver the text, reading it at a steady pace and maintaining the tone, the meaning, the purpose of the text, and I had to do that from Polish into English and then from English into Polish. So that's your oral parts, and then the written task, like I said, usually takes place a week after. Unit 4 is translation into English from your language, and then Unit 5 is a translation from English into your language. Very important consideration here. Units 1, 2 and 3 will be delivered via Microsoft Teams platform, and Unit 4 and 5 will be delivered using a Rogo platform, which you can have a go with in advance. So very briefly, the 4 types of skills that will be tested: consecutive interpreting, simultaneous interpreting, sight translation, and written translation. This is basically how this exam is organized and structured. It's also very important to understand that on the point where you're going to start practicing, and I will be talking about practicing as well, you have to remember that the exam is timed. At some point it might be worth using a timer or roughly looking at the time that it takes you to work through a particular scenario. So it's important, especially if you are a rambly talker like myself, to be mindful that once the allocated time is up, the exam will no longer be graded. So here are some free resources that you can access in your own time from the CIOL's website. They will help you to get better understanding of what the examination, the online only examination, looks like, and will also help you get your mind around using technology and using remote facilities to sit the exam. So first resource that I have here is oh, by the way, sorry, got a bit too fast. You can find them on the CIOL's website, which is www.ciol.org.uk. I typed in the whole address here. Basically, you have to go onto the tab called Qualifications, and then DPSI, Diploma in Public Service Interpreting. Now, one thing that I would like to tell you is that you have to go through quite a few tabs because it's not all on one side, not on one all on one website. So you just have to look around and click to find all those resources that I present now, that I'm presenting now. It would just take too long and take too much space to type in the address for each one of them, but basically head to qualifications, diploma in public service interpreting, and then you will be able, by clicking onto preparation, etc., you'll be able to find all those documents and resources that I will be discussing right now. So the first resource is a Unit 1 from an English only past paper. So this is just a taster of what the Unit 1 looks like. By the way, Unit 1 is comprised of parts 1A and 1B. The part 1A, as I have mentioned, is a consecutive interpreting task, but the part 1B is a simultaneous interpreting task, which is based on 2 recordings. Each one of them is about 4 minutes long, and you have a total of 10 minutes for Unit 1B and 20 minutes for Unit 1A. But that's just to recap what I've said before. So here's where you can basically download the past paper and just take a look at what the topic might be or what the scenario might be. Now, the next resource, Topics from the Examination in November from last year, is extremely valuable because, again, it gives you an idea of the range of topics and the range of subjects you might encounter. So it's very useful to just take a look at these. This document is the one that I'm using to prepare those presentations, and it's very useful. I highly recommend that you download it and read it several times, highlight the most important information, and just read it very carefully because it gives you an idea of the overall qualification. Again, candidate information document, it's also extremely useful because it gives you a very thorough breakdown of the technical requirements and the overall format of the examination as it is now. And there are a few things that are no longer basically relevant, like the section on DPI, which has been withdrawn. So that's not something that basically you can sit anymore, as far as I know, unless I think there are some regulations if you still have a period of sitting the units that you were not as successful with. But basically, long story short, just pay attention to the sections on the DPSI, and again, I highly recommend that you print this document, highlight the most important information, write down the most important requirements. If you want to know more about the technical requirements, head on to my DPSI playlist and watch episode from last week, where I break down the non-negotiable requirements that you have to adhere to without exception in order to be allowed to sit an examination. So if you want to refresh that subject, I recommend that video. This is very useful because this resource gives you a sample paper to translate from English into your target language using the Rogo platform. And this platform is used for online examinations now in written translation tasks. So this is used for the DPSI for Unit 4 and 5. So Unit 5 translation from English into your target language, and Unit 4 translation into English from your target language. So it's very useful to just check out this resource. Again, you will be able to do a mock exam type of task. You will be allocated 1 hour and 10 minutes to translate a passage that is given, and then familiarize yourself with the platform, familiarize yourself with how it reacts, with what tools are there, and just get more used to using it. Resource number 6 is a clip on YouTube. It is available on the CIOL's YouTube channel. I will be posting the link in the video description. If you don't have a habit of looking at the video description, with my videos I always put important information and useful links into the video description. So if you want to know more, if there was something that you maybe didn't catch the first time, if you want to just find out more, head on to the video description. This is where all the links will be, so you don't have to make any notes, you don't have to worry about that. So CIOL's YouTube channel, this clip explains how to use Microsoft Teams for the oral units, which are units 1, 2 and 3. Unit 1, as we have said, consists of unit 1A and 1B, and units 2 and 3 are sight translation tasks, so oral sight translation tasks. In Polish we call it a vista. I really like that name, but everywhere else it's sight translation. So in order not to get a bit panicky with Microsoft Teams, you can watch this clip. I will be creating a special Microsoft Teams tech video where I'm going to show you what it looks like, show you what different settings there are, how to set up your sound, how to set up your image, etc. So you can just learn how to use this in advance. By the way, it is an industry standard tool for many of the court hearings nowadays. They use MS Teams, so it's just useful to know this tool in general. But again, this is something to help you wrap your head around what the platform for the oral tasks is going to look like. And our last resource is a clip explaining how to use the Rogo platform for the written translation tasks. So as I said before, units 4 and 5, and again it breaks down the whole process of logging on, validating your identity, so confirming your identity with a document of proof of ID, sharing screen, because you will have to share screen during the exam, and it just walks you step by step. Again, this is available on the Chartered Institute of Linguists YouTube channel. I do recommend watching it a couple of times. It is quite fast paced, and it might be worth just watching it several times, writing down the steps and breaking them down so you basically know what to click on and when. So again, this was the free DPSI resources section. I will be regularly adding to this library of knowledge, as I would like to call my videos, and I will be presenting some useful tools. And again, please make sure to check the video description for useful links. That was it for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for commenting and for liking my videos and sharing them. I'm extremely humbled and grateful. Please consider subscribing if you want to get videos about public service interpreting in the UK, DPSI qualifications, prep, CPD and more. And until next week's episode, when I'm going to talk a bit more about prep and analysing your current level of skills. Until then, keep safe, keep learning and keep growing. Bye bye.